be like in 2065 here on this grand island of Guam. Next, please. Hey, but I am military, so I gotta have a map, a chart, something. Okay, we got to keep going back. I got to talk about a little bit what I know as I grow. But I think it's important. I've been involved in several different plans, whether it's for the submarines that I've operated on, whether it's for the Iraqi campaign plans that we've done, whether it's for whatever you do in any organization. The first thing you have to do is understand your environment. And that goes from the tactical to operational all the way to the strategic level. The whole rebalance that we have going now is not a military rebalance. President Obama has bought into it. And it's important for us to realize here, as we sit in the center of what is currently going on in the world. And as you move out and come up with your plans, each of these tables, I think it's important to realize this environment that you're in. You cover this area, this Asia, Indo-Pacific region is about half of the geography of Earth. Okay, that's huge. 36 nations, about half the population of the world. 5 of the 7 U.S. treaties are here. And since the days of Alfred Thayer Mahan, who's one of the grand naval strategists of our time, they've understood what places like Guam has to do for the social, economic, and military aspects of building countries and surviving in this world. So from Hollywood to Bollywood, from polar bears to penguins, that is your tapestry. And I think keep that in mind, that this island is not that small. Your environment is what will take you to the future, take us to the future, and help us grow into 2065. Guam is the bridge, the pathway, the gateway between East and West. And I think that has to be part of your discussions as you move forward, to not make it about just the size of this island or just about the Marianas Islands, but your impact on a global, at least the Pacific realm. So let me take you on a path that I've been trying to go on as I've been preparing for this and go, okay, well, what's it going to look like? I know we got a brief after this that'll lay this out better, but I want to show you where we've been, and where we're going next. A couple pictures here. Ken Leon Guerrero, I think that's the Hancock you were on back in 1965 that you told me about a little earlier. The submarine down the lower right. And I have to keep a couple submarines. But take a look at these pictures. And it shows you about 1965 what it looked like here. Okay? And now in 2015, the changes have gone. And in 2065, the only way we're going to get there is through what you're doing today, your imagination, your enthusiasm, your innovation, your creativity. And I am very happy to see that the students are here as well as us old people. And I know their contribution to this will be amazing and incredible. But you can't get to the future unless you're looking for it. Next slide, please. So on the military side, I'm trying to make a couple parallels on how do we get there and what do you have to really look like. And I'll give you some history here. So the military right now is going through, Department of Defense is what we're calling the third offset strategy. And as it plays out, similar to what we're doing, the timelines for this is almost 50 years apart as we look. So your first offset here, and I'll go over to the left bubbles there, the bubbles on your left to describe. The first offset was, hey, we're back in the post-World War II era, and there's a huge conventional forces built up on land. The Soviet Union is strong, and they could take over all of Europe. We didn't have, so we could either get in a money race with them, build up all these conventional arms, or we got to come up with an offset, something that we don't have to spend the money, something we can still maintain our advantage. So what do? We develop nuclear weapons better, faster, quicker than anyone else. We regained our competitive advantage. Okay, we set off a nuclear arms race. After that, we get to the 1970s, 1980s. And the next phase is coming in. Now everybody has nuclear weapons. We're all set up. And what do we do now to get our advantage back? What do we do to make sure that deterrence still holds true? Well, we brought in precision munitions, So instead of just carpet bombing lands, from all of Tokyo or whatever as we did in World War II. We can actually hit key strategic places at the time of our choosing. What that allowed us to do is reduce the possibility that a nuclear escalation would occur in that type of strategic war, and actually keep and regain our offset without having to go down that path. Since that time, nuclear weapons have started to come down. This country has become more stable in that area as far as deterrence goes. And now we're on this embark. We've gotten there. As time goes, technology catches up. Every other country out there has developed precision munitions. So we're now on equal. So what do we do? What is the Navy's, what is the military's next offset? And that's what we're looking at. It is all about innovation. And as you look there, we even called it Defense Innovation Initiative, to give it a more formal name than Third Offset Strategy. And it's very similar to what I have, when I've looked back into history here and look, very similar to kind of what we're trying to do today, all right? And the recent life of Guam now was brought on the first offset there with the military, okay? Post-World War II, military ownership, governorship of Guam, until the early 40s and 50s, where it starts to shift over to the Department of Interior, and then on to your own governments. And then in 1962, huge thing happened. President Kennedy repealed or revoked the Naval Clearing Act, which allowed tourism in. And your next wave come in. Such to the fact that in the research I've done, it's about the 90s or so, tourism is on par with military as far as economic engines that keep you going. So now we got to get to the third. We've got there. What's the next strategy? What is the niche that Guam is going to put in to their life, to their culture, to take you to the next level, to take us to the next level as we move forward? What is our competitive advantage? Next. Well, coming up here after Pika's, I think it will help me take this slide home a little bit better than I initially thought I could. But one thing I've had to bring to is it is a whole of Guam initiative. On the left side, you'll see this thing called dime fill. Whenever we as the military build these campaign plans to go do something, it is not a military-only plan. It is a whole of government. If it wants to be successful, all of those engines on the left have to be kicking at the same time, all for one purpose, and moving along that path. This is not about rice bowls of any particular one of those areas. Each one has to be moving in the same direction, unified by a mission. In this case, I changed all the fonts and the styles to show you that they're not all equal either. It's a coordinated effort, a plan that each individual agency, organization, individual applies to, focusing on what the objective of the plan is. And you can change that over time as you go. But in general, it isn't one person. It isn't one idea. It isn't one group, one of these tables out here that's going to come up and get us to this offset. It is all of us together, combining on one mission, one objective, and then we move forward on it. And that's what I see here. The placard that we will see in 2065, placed in some prominent location here on the island of Guam, dignifying the efforts that we put forward today, is really the group of 17 imagination teams out there. And the mission that we will accomplish is based on the success of the diversity. The individuals in this room, from student to military to resident from birth to all the people that raised their hand in the Pika's presentation just before, they will be contributors to that. And at the end of the day, though, the binding glue, the mission, the objective, the thing that's going to hold this thing together to keep you moving on along the path is the same thing that grabbed a hold of me shortly after I stepped foot on the island. And I put the seal of Guam there. It's the culture, it's the people, it's the things that make Guam great, not on Guam, and not only on Guam, throughout everywhere I've been, everywhere I've touched, and every person I've met in this room and now in different locations throughout the world. So the challenge for you today is the same thing you've been hearing. The core values are your mission, your objective, and through that, you have to drop some of your rice bowls, you have to look for the greater good of all, and you have to move forward as a team and a mission so that we all in 2065 will realize that niche, that area, that strength that binds us together even today, gathered in this room. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much again, Captain Jeff Grimes. That's probably the first time I've been an 06 with such a strong Pacific Islander accent. Pinaloko na tatabaragada si Jeff Grimes. Thank you so much for such an informative presentation. As we take control of our future, we also need to consider the global and environmental forces that will affect all of us. Without a doubt, the climate is changing, and those changes will have tremendous impact upon our community. It'll affect immigration. We already acknowledge that technology is changing the ways, and in many ways, that we ourselves cannot even fathom. Medical advances hold the promise of keeping us alive a little bit longer. As the captain highlighted, geopolitical forces, military and otherwise, will help shape how we are affected by conflict, how we are affected by the scarcity of resources, and from freedom itself. It's a whole lot to think about, especially when we look ahead 50 years from now, 50 years into the future. And that's why we wanted to reach out and ask a local visionary to help us get a better grip of this perspective, to give us a glimpse into the future, someone who's been on the entrepreneurial cusp of things, oftentimes on the avant-garde. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce a personal friend and a local visionary, someone with a creative genius we hope we can all appreciate. Endo. How about a round of applause?
Good morning, everybody. We're getting our presentation set up. I see some friends from a while back. You know, I started many, many years ago. I was a young guy. Now I'm old like the rest of you. But it's okay, you know? That's what happens. The future kind of creeps up on you, and that's kind of our topic. So if we're ready with the video, I'd like to set that up and set things in motion, and I'll get right into things. You ready? Oh, before I start, you know, I was here last night, very late into the evening. Can we give all the logistics team that put this together a round of applause, because they're always forgotten. Well, the governor had technical problems. I guess I can have one too. Well, we had the governor here, we had visionaries, we had military, we had Chamorros, we had women, and now we have a hippie up here, so I guess we're really balanced, okay? All right, go ahead and hit it.
In 50 years, I wish my shoes can transform to anything.
Hey girl with the boots on, I want you to come this way so we can do something. I wanna give you everything, make a new home. Do you like my new tune? That's my new song. And you can see I got my brand new suit on. Come get messy on me, come get your groove on. If you don't like what I'm talking about, I'll move on. But I'm quite sure you like what I do wrong, because I love the way you move when you rock those hips. Baby, I'm looking for a brand new partnership. Can't stop staring at you, girl, you gotta give. Do I want it? Oh yes, girl, I'm positive. Up top, down low, up the middle, she good, come on, rock the way, girl, 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 rock the way, girl,
All right. I want to thank those guys up there for sharing their video clips with me. Warner Brothers, don't sue me, please. You gotta have Blade Runner, though. You got to have Blade Runner. All right, next. Okay, so I'm supposed to talk about the next 50 years, right? And my title is The Future Arrived While You're Eating Corned Beef Fried Rice. Could have been toast, depends on where you're from. But I'm from Guam, so it's corned beef fried rice. All right. So a little bit about me. Well, I grew up here. I came here when I was 2, a little over 3. I'm 46 now. I hate to admit that on live television and streaming. It's the secret's out. So I've been here for a little over 40 years. And, you know, I probably am not your typical image for Guam, Guamanian. I don't look it. I don't sound it. But I'm very much Guam. You know, when I'm in the States traveling. Yeah, go ahead. You know, like Guam, you're your own person. You know, Guam has a national country that has a symbol. It's the flag of America. But like me, when I go around town, when I travel the world, they go, "Where are you from?" I say, "I'm from Guam." They go, "You don't look like you're from Guam." I said, "Do you even know where Guam is?" They go, "Not really, but you speak pretty good English for someone that's from Guam." And they said, "No, what are you?" I said, "Well, I'm Japanese, but I'm from Guam." And you know what? We're all from Guam here, right? We all are. And this is our community, and this is why we're here today. Thanks. I added this slide right before I got up here. And I normally don't do this last minute stuff, but in listening to the previous presenters, from the governor all the way down to the captain. By the way, Captain, I love your last name, Grimes. I'm a big Walking Dead fan. All right. Grimes. All right. What can we learn from Cupertino? Cupertino, as you know, is the headquarters of Apple Computer, or now just Apple. They are the world's largest brand. They're the most capital valued company in the world, right? Bigger than Exxon. Well, in 1974, whatever it was, that Steve Jobs and his partner Wozniak opened up Apple, the population at Cupertino was 32,000, far less than what we have here. But about the same in 1945 for Guam, local population, that is. Today, they're at 60,000, and they're the headquarters of the world's largest brand. Apple employs 15,000 people to do that. If we looked at Guam as a brand, not as a tourist destination, not as a fishing destination, but as a brand of people, we've got 150,000 employees of Guam to make Guam, like Apple, a global brand, successful, and probably the most valuable. So when we're talking about this, imagine Guam, and you say, "Oh, but we're so small, we're so tiny. All these great ideas are good, but it can't possibly happen." Think about Apple, and think about the garage, and think about 2 visionaries that changed the world and dented the universe, right? So think about that. And this is much larger than the garage. Believe me, I have a garage. I don't have a garage this big. And we are a very strong group of people. So I think together, today, we're going to make a difference. And who knows, in 25 years, we may just be the next Apple worldwide. Okay, next. Predicting the next 50 years. This is a topic that Troy was nice enough to say, "Hey, do you want to talk about 50 years? I said, "Man, I'm only 46. And he said, "No, not about you." I said, "Well, okay, what about then?" He says, "No, what's going to happen in the 50 years? And I said, "Well, okay, I guess I could do that. Let me think about it. Let me chew on it, and let me find out." So I did some research. I'm not an economist. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm not anything really. What I am is an observer, right? And I'm a human being. And so my presentation today to you is purely from a human aspect, not as a professional this or that. And so you may disagree, you may agree, but that isn't the point. The point is to kind of provoke our brains a little bit and think about the future and think about what it might be bringing to us. All right. So I've broken it down to 4 components today. First one is value, and there was a lot of it actually spoken by Pika and Anne-Marie about values. And coincidentally, none of us got together in a room to discuss what we were going to talk about. This is purely random and coincidental. And so it's very much serendipity. So next is environment, which is my topic. I was asked to talk about the environment. And the environment is the world, isn't it? So it will involve climate change, population, et cetera, et cetera. Technology, one of my favorite things. And then last but not least, and I put it last so that you have opportunity to actually politely leave the room if all three were no good, because that's what I'm thinking. So I saved the last part for me. Okay. So let's talk about values. You know, there was a lot of values discussed earlier, and I can't say that I disagree with any of it. I think, you know, Guam, after 300 years of various occupations by superpowers of the time, Spain, Japan, and now the US. An occupation sounds like a dirty word, it's a negative word, but it isn't, it's just facts. It's just what happened, right? And so we can sit here and keep dwelling on it, or we can think forward. And for me, values is about future past, right? Because at some point, the past really does reveal the future. So I got to thinking, how can I best explain this? And I thought of a fellow you might know. His name is Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I know he's not tomorrow, but he was a great thinker of his time. He was ahead of his time. At the time, it was unpopular to think there could be equality between race. He was primarily concerned with race in his subject matter. We're a diverse group here in Guam. We're not really all that concerned with race per se. There are racial discriminations here. Far more today than when I was growing up. And I have a theory on that. I'll share with that later. Remind me to talk to you about playgrounds. But I thought, well, Martin Luther King is not here, unfortunately, but if he were, his virtual state, he would probably have a Twitter account. I mean, what better way? The Twitter is changing the world, right? Something's happening in Egypt, we know about it. Can you imagine if Martin Luther King had a Twitter account? How powerful his message could have been and how the world might have just been a very different place today. So let's start off with his first tweet. He just opened a Twitter account. There he is, certified. Right. Figuring out the hashtag there. So I'm not going to read every tweet. You read along, and I'm just going to narrative this a little bit. Okay? I'm going to walk around. Sorry, camera guys. So he's given a sermon in Detroit 57 years ago. This is 1954. And it's a sermon. It's not one of his bigger speeches yet. In fact, he doesn't do his I Have a Dream speech until many, many years later. This is the catalyst. This is like the Imagine Guam. It was a congregation where he started to develop his core ideas. And in it, he goes on to explain how at that time, 1954, mind you, he says that, you know, we got to make change. Maybe because change isn't happening because we're not smart enough. We don't have enough science. We don't have enough mathematics. We don't have enough great new things. And then he says, no, that can't be true because at our time right now, we've sent people to the moon and we're planning to do this and this and this. And he's saying, hey, I think it's not science. I don't think that it's that at all. And he says, well, if it's not about science, then what is it? Then he comes to the conclusion that it's just mankind. The problem to our future is ourselves. Makes sense to me. Right? And he hones into a couple of things here, one of which really struck to me. He says, this world is messed up because of mankind's ill will. We should be working towards doing good, but for some reason, we end up being evil. And that is a profound declaration and not a popular thing to say at that time with his skin color to the world, to a white world. And he says something very, very relevant to our conversation today here. Rediscover lost values, precious lost values. In other words, we have to go back to go forward, right? And I'm not sure who coined that phrase first, but hey, he's got a Twitter account, let him say it. Now, I love that because I think to be thinking of the future, we have to think of the past. What are the things that, not that we made mistakes on, but what have we forgotten? What have we left? Right? Human decency is at an all-time low. Right? Human interaction is digital. Now, I talked about playgrounds. I'll bring it up again. When I was growing up, there was no iPhone. There was no email. There was just a playground. There were no apps. And until a little bit later, there wasn't a Nintendo. You remember those? Yeah. So there was a playground. And you went there, and you met all sorts of different kids, because this is Guam. And there was a Chuukese kid, and a Palau kid, and an American, Caucasian, Japanese, Chinese, you name it. But I didn't look at them that way. I just looked at them as kids in the playground. I don't think we have enough playgrounds anymore. Do you? I have kids, and I have a hard time finding playgrounds. And when I do, I need to go pay for it and go inside a building to let them play. I think, please, as a personal favor to me today, when you're thinking about development for this island, please include playgrounds, because these same kids that were from different countries, well, guess what? They are my friends on Facebook now. I communicate with them daily, or if not monthly, on email or phone or message. Some of them have become very important people in their own countries, and some of them are just regular folks, and that's okay too. But you know what? We need to go back to those precious values, right? So the future is about human beings. It's about people like you and I. So I want to think about that. So kind of burn that in your mind. And part of my request for this presentation was to kind of get everybody to think loosely. So since it's the morning, I can't buy you a drink. So how about I give you a whiskey of words here? Okay. Next. Future now. By the way, if you want to make noise, go for it. You can boo or you can cheer. Today was considered the future at some point in the past. I know that sounds like a Dr. Seuss line, but it is true. What's the future today? Okay, so let's take a look. Well, today we have a main topic of environment. What is the environment? The environment is a natural world that is affected by humanity, right? So let's take a look at components of the environment. It's been predicted that global population will swell to 10 billion people by 2050.